I guess we can slowly get started. Welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. It is my great pleasure today to introduce Alexey Muraviev, who is an associate professor at the HAS University, where he's also the head of the Study and Research Unit History and People of the Medieval Caucasia. Alexey Muraviev graduated in Classic at Moscow University and obtained his PhD from the Russian Academy of Science in 1994.
I think you're muted at the moment.
Okay, where did you lose me? So Alexey Muraviev graduated in Classics at Moscow University and obtained his PhD from the Russian Academy of Science with a thesis on Jude and the Apostate. He went different time abroad on research stays. He was, for instance, at the École Française de Rome, at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, or in Munich, or in Melbourne, and currently he is on a sabbatical at the University of Tübingen. His research interests are definitely ample. His works mainly focus on the Christian Orient and the Silk Road, with a particular attention to Syriac, Ethiopian, and Georgian traditions, but also Arabic or Persian. Amongst his numerous publications, I will only mention two of his most recent English publications. In 2022, he published a chapter called Facing the Faceless, Eastern Syriac Mystics Before the Mystery of Effacing Self, and in 2021, the chapter In Search of the Lost Memories of the Persian Mob Converted to Christianity in the 4th Century. Today, Alexey Muraviev will present a paper entitled The Church of the East and the Origin of the First Barlaam and Josaphat, Kekelidze's Ideas Revisited. The floor is all yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be with you on this spring morning, I would say. And I'm especially happy to see Sebastian Brock here between our partakers and of the seminar. So should I start the? Okay, I'm not able to share the. Could you please?
You are now.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Right. Do you see the presentation? Yeah. Okay. So I will be trying to reassess or reevaluate the idea of the famous Georgian scholar Kekelidze concerning the origin and the way the famous hagiographical romance or hagiographical story, which is usually called Barlaam and Josaphat in the Western tradition, or Barlaam and Josaphat in the Greek and Russian tradition, how it reached the readers, and how the Church of the East or the Church in Iran and eastern part of the Sassanid Empire initially, and then further to the east, how it, which part it took in the transformation of this narrative. Okay. The problem is that is a very popular story that nearly every year you have 1-2 articles trying to reorder the different versions of this romance, of this narrative, but to no success, and because despite many studies, there is no consent on the origin, and we'll see further a slide with the scheme, how different versions of the romance go together. The cause of this scholarly problem, this inability of the scholarly tradition to make a correct order, to my mind, is the lack of historical setting or the scene, the Sitzen of the legend, and particularly what was the milieu where the legend did originate. I will see the problem in a couple of minutes. And what is the additional message added by the translators? I will very briefly go through the different elements of the dossier just to remind you of the complexity of this story. The most famous is the Greek version, which was at the origin of the subsequent Latin, French, German, Old French, and certainly Church Slavonic versions. It was, according to the modern tradition, or the consent of the modern tradition, it was translated by Euthemius of the Holy Mountain of Athos, the famous Eftimium Platsnideli, the Georgian translator, polymath, and enlightener. It was translated from ancient Georgian to the Greek. That is initially the Konibi and Father Petrus hypothesis that is accepted now. It betrays a considerable Christianization, including changing of names, changing of places, biblicization, and so forth. It was for quite a long time ascribed to John of Damascus, the famous polemicist and liturgical writer. But later, it was Dolger certainly who tried to put forward this idea. But then it's mostly attributed to some unknown John of Marsaba in Palestine. But fortunately, in the catalog, in the Fihrist of Al-Nadim, scholars attracted attention to the Kitab al-Bud, the story of Buddha. Well, if this Bud should be understood as Buddha, the Siddhartha, and two more books, story of Eberhard Buddha, and one more. This was when the scholars did understand that it is not only Georgian, it is not only Greek, but also Arabic. Several Arabic versions were published. Now we see the Arabic versions in their chronological order as poem by Aban and Nahiki, the so-called Bombay Ismaili version, edited critically by Daniel Gimaret, the Shiite version of the Ikmal ad-Din or Kamal ad-Din, by Ibn Babur, shortened Jews of Halle version, edited by Hommel, and the Christian Arabic version, which is has been recently edited in Paris. And I still didn't get my copy of it, so I'm very eager to see what it is. There were several translations from Arabic, and the Arabic versions are now very thoroughly studied by a group of scholars, several group of scholars. The one which I'm very indebted to is the group of Kirill Dmitriev and Bilal Orfani, which is based in St. Andrews University, UK. So the third element of the dossier is the Georgian version, which is preserved in two versions. There's the long one and the short one. The long one is preserved in two manuscripts, in several manuscripts, the two manuscripts of Martyr, 76 and Jerusalem 36, and the long one in Jerusalem 140, under the somewhat misleading name of Sibzne Balavaris, or the wisdom of Balavar, and it is followed by a longer version. It was edited first by Takaishvili and then by Ilya Buladze, two times, then followed by several translations. The importance of the Georgian version is certainly very, very crucial, because it was the source of the Greek translation. Well, this is the edition of Buladze, the second one, and the electronic version, which is available on TeTra's website. So we are now free to consult it on the internet. We know that it was abbreviated from version A to B. This is the Balavaris, the second version. They abbreviated the shortened version. It is like 40% shorter, but it has preserved, and that is important for us, some archaic elements which seem to be more archaic than in the long version, and that's clue to the next idea. Well, the important element of the dossiers are the Iranian, I say very widely Iranian, not to say Persian, because there was a hypothetical Middle Persian version written in Pahlavi. There is a fragment, a sectarian fragment published by Henning. There is a lost early Middle Persian version from the 9th century, from which the one fragment of Rudaki has been preserved. There is a new Persian reworking by Ibn Babui, who also did the Arabic version. There is an Uyghur fragment from the 12th century published from the Kok, and there is a reworking by Nizam ad-Din Shami. That you see that all the four elements, Greek, Arabic, Georgian, and Iranian, go together in a way that they are somehow connected, and the problem of the dossiers, how they are connected, and in where and in what milieu the translations were made. So the affiliation is the big problem of the dossier. So you see that I took the general affiliation idea from two articles, Toran Nihoff and David Marshall Lang. So you see that basically there is an idea that the origin lies in the Buddhist original, written probably in Sanskrit, then goes some problematic Manichaean version. This, I will come to this idea later, which gave the birth to different versions in Uyghur, in all Uyghur, a lost Persian version, and the first Arabic version, and then all the following. So you see the origin is somehow very vague, although we know more or less how the different Arabic versions are interconnected. We have at least a vague idea how the new Persian versions are connected, and the Arabic and Greek, but this Manichaean version is somehow a problem. Wallace Batch, in one of his articles, he gave the idea that there should have been a Syriac version at some point. This is just an illustration, because the Van Ranschel had published two small fragments in Le Museum, which he identified as parts of Barlaam and Josaphat story, but until now they didn't receive any continuation. So that's that's the beginning of the first fragment, and it is not called Barlaam and Josaphat or something like that. It is called in a very vague way. But now I'm coming to the central point of my communication, that the Corneli Kekelidze, basing on Bacchus' idea that should have been a Syriac original, he in his article published back by the end of the 1920s, but then republished in the collection of his Etude, the collection of his studies in 1950, says, basing on Ignacy Kraszkowski's article, that it was translated from Pehlevi, from Pehlevi version. Well, he says in the Syriac literary tradition. That same Tsarlova is word difficult to translate. It's not a literature, it's like a literary tradition. But he says it was translated in Abbasid times, Abbasid Bistros. That's also very vague. But anyway, he thinks that there was a Syriac version. And then further, he states that there was an internal schism under Catholicos Ishoyav by the mid-7th century, which produced the necessity to revindicate Catholicosate against separatist movement, Indian separatist movement. And he said then that this separatist movement manifested itself aimed at separating Seleucid against Catholicos, and they made a story of Apostle Thomas and his famous. Well, I will not be discussing the certain inadequacy of this Apostle Thomas story, but anyway, he had the idea that there was a conscious reworking of the story within the Church of the East. Well, to assess this hypothesis, I first will put away the untenable hypothesis that the Arabic version was translated from Syriac. That is not true. That the translators wanted to oppose with the Barlaam and Josaphat story, the Apostle Thomas legend, and then turn to what is tenable. I think that the connection with the Church of the East external politics is should be taken as something very interesting. Then secondly, I would like to support the dating of the times of the Catholicos Ishoyav. And finally, the idea to connect it with the Iranians, speaking milieu, is something that I think very, very true. I would turn now to the translation movement as identity, part of the identity in the Eastern Syriac tradition. But we know that the school tradition in the Sasanian Empire after the relocation of the schools from Edessa to Nisibis was based on the translation, mostly from Greek, but then it's continued with other translations. The translation movement, it generated the big translation movement in the 6th to 8th centuries, which resulted in translating a lot of Greek works and the big and a number of works translated. So which continued to the era of Arabic translation for Naim ibn Ishaq and his followers, and then, but also the part of this translation was the Sogdian translation, and I'm very I think this idea is very true, and especially after the publication of the catalog by Nicholas Sims-Williams, where he published quite a lot of Syriac, of Sogdian texts translated from Syriac, written with the Syriac letters, and reflecting thus the big translation tradition within the Iranian-speaking milieu in the Central Asia. That's this cat means that we shouldn't neglect the Sogdian tradition. But there was certainly at some point some kind of Indian translation, but we don't have very much of it. But there was then, after the Sogdian, a Turkic translation, and working on Uyghur texts with Peterson and Sebastian Brock. Recently, I understood how important was this translation from Sogdian and from Syriac to Uyghur, especially within the missionary activity of the Church of the East. So let's see let's now just briefly, I will stop on the question of certain Isaac, who is present in the prologue of the second short version of the Sibzne Balavaris, the Wisdom of Balavar in Georgia. It is said that certain father, Mama Isaac, Father Isaac, son of Sophronius, Sophron of Palestine, who he stayed with the Boskoi in the desert, and who found this book, I mean the book of Balavar. Once he was in Eoped. Eoped is a Georgian adverbial case, which means in the Eoped. The idea of Abulad, and then of some scholars that Eoped is Ethiopia, and it generated the whole idea that he found the book in Ethiopia. But Eoped is not that easy. I would propose a solution for that. He found this book in some Indian collection, and Shalva Nutsubidze, the famous Georgian academician and scholar, and thought that it was John Moskos, that Isaac was a pseudonym for John Moskos, which seems quite problematic for me. Grigory Lurie, one of my colleague from St. Petersburg, proposed that it was really Ethiopia in the sense that it was Nubia, and the story of Barlaam and Josaphat reflects the conversion of Nubia, which I think that Eopia is Eopia, the seaport very close to Jerusalem and to Marsaba. The Ishaq or Isaac, the son of Sophron, means that he was in the Patriarchate in the times of the Patriarchate of Sophronius, and Marsaba was situated quite close to Eopia, to modern Tel Aviv, and it was a place where many translations of Eastern Syriac texts were made probably in the 8th century, but beginning probably from the 7th century, possibly following the meeting of Catholicos and the Emperor Heraclius. But anyway, we know that Isaac of Nineveh was translated in Marsaba as well, and John of Daliata and some other Eastern Syriac writers. Was John of Marsaba John of Damascus? I don't really think so, but the connection with Marsaba is very clear. So now I will propose the way the legend came and what and try to see what role played the Church of the East in all this way. The Indian stories, the Mahayana, mainly Jatakas, were created mostly in the northern India, close to the region of Khorasan, where missionaries, both Buddhist and Christian, were very active. They mixed with Avadana literature and parables, different edifying stories, and in this milieu, early Buddhist missionaries brought the legend to Khorasan and Central Asia, even before the two stories about Buddha, Lalita Vistara and Buddha Charita, have become popular in these places. And probably it was there that it was picked up by the Church of these missionaries. We know that in Central Asia, Church of these monasteries coexisted with Buddhist monasteries. This is the case of Chach, modern Tashkent, and Marakanda, the Samarkand. And especially, we know that by that time, the Church of these missionaries were active in China, where they went to China, and in China they used Buddhist translation techniques, and they asked Buddhist monks to help them. So there was a kind of working together between the Buddhist and the Church of the East Christian missionaries. So even only then it became popular in the Middle Persian, probably including Manichaean, Sogdian, and later early New Persian. Probably at that time some Syriac translations were made as well, but they were not that important because until now we have only the publication of two stories by Barlaam and Josaphat. After the Arabic conquest of Khorasan and the spread of the Arabic language across Khorasan and Central Asia, the Shiites and Ismaili scholars translated it from the early New Persian to Arabic under the Persian name of al-Malik wal-Nasik, the Ibn al-Malik, son of the king, the prince, and the ascetic. Then the New Persian version of Ibn Baboy was made from the early New Persian version or early Arabic version. Both are lost, and they are hypothetical. Then the Georgian A version was made from Ismaili Arabic, but the copy of the early New Persian or Arabic abridged version ended in Jaffa, probably Yope, and then in Marsaba, where it was translated into Georgian. So the citizen Balavarisai probably was translated not from Arabic, but from some Arabicized New Persian version, Hekmat-e Belavar. Well, that's the idea that comes to my mind. Yes, then Eftim took the longer version, Christianized it, and changed the names to a more biblical pattern. For example, he changed the name of Balavat to Barlaam and so forth. But in the Inner Asia, Uyghurs made a version from early New Persian, and then the further Arabic versions were made. I will stop I have no more time, but I stop two names that illustrate in a way this tricky way how these translations were made. The name of Iosaf or Josaphat is a result of the transformation of Bodhisattva, the enlightened, which became a Bodhisattva in Middle Persian, early New Persian text, and then it became Bodhisattva in New Persian, Buddhasat or Buddhasaf, and Iodasaf in Georgian, and then Iosaf in Greek. the famous Müller said that there is no law in Indian phonetics which admits the change of sattva in the bodhisattva to sattva. But in New Persian, Buddha sattva is a regular rendering of the bodhisattva. And you can see it in any dictionary. That means that by that time it was already a settled fact. In Uyghur translation, it used the bodhisattva as a regular rendering, but not the bodhisattva. You see the tiny is here, as in the Buddhist Uyghur text. So it could be that there was the early New Persian could coexist with some Aramaic bodhisattva or something like that at some point. Then the Balawar is a more tricky history because there is no consent about what was the origin. I think that Müller and Zahau proposed a very interesting idea that it is Purohita, which is possible in Pahlavi script, where could be interchanged, and there is a very free way to render different sounds, so that could be this way. So I think that it could be that also Henning proposed that the Sogdian translation of the prince and the Chandala's son is a calque of the Syriac, but he didn't propose what Syriac could be there. Well, I could imagine, I don't know for sure, but I could imagine that it could be something with Bar Ahuda, the one who keeps, or Bar Ahuda. Unfortunately, we don't have this in the dictionaries, belonging to the brotherhood or something like that. Strangely as it may seem, it was translated, the ascetic was translated by Chandala, which means a general, a most despised of the mixed castes, the despised man. So the ascetic probably means a wanderer, a man without home or name, and thus it was this Christian idea was, which was very popular within the Syriac tradition, was combined with the Indian and idea of a man without caste or origin. Well, I now will briefly formulate the final hypothesis. To my mind, in Khorasan or Mawar al-Nahar, the Jatakas were mixed with parables, became propagated by Buddhist missionaries. Church of these missionaries encountered on the borders of India a story of the conversion of the prince and other parables. They used it as to convert some tribes and peoples in the Central Asia. And we know that, for example, in many places, princes and local kings converted to Christianity, were converted due to the preaching of the Church of these missionaries. This story of the Prince Enlightened and his ascetic preceptor became a popular story on the Silk Road because in the context of this certain closeness of Buddhist and Christian preaching. Occasionally parts were translated to Syriac. Probably we see it in the name story, but the main language of the preaching was early New Persian, and this is the crucial point. I think that the Church of these missionaries used not only Syriac, but also Sogdian, early New Persian, and then later Chinese and Uyghur languages. So when we are talking about Georgian theist missions, we should not be talking about only Syriac texts. So with the progress of Arabic in the area in the Central Asia, special translations were made by Shia Muslims, which then this Shia verse were then in Marsaba translated into Georgian. Christian early New Persian, which was not very familiar to the beginning of the before, let's say, 10th, 11th century, was somewhat difficult for people to understand what it is, and some Iranian speakers called it Parsi Idariya, the Persian spoke at the court, but the origin is Khorasan. It was the language of the version found in Jaffa and then translated into Georgian. So that is basically my idea how the story of the Barlaam and Josaphat reached the monastery on Mount Athos, where it was finally translated into Greek and became especially popular within the Western and Eastern Christianity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for presenting such complex material with so many intricacies from one part to the other. We're welcoming conversation now. Feel free to react in any way by raising your hand or basically, ideally, because we are in two-screen territory, ideally by raising the hand electronically. Andy, please.
Thank you very much, Alexey. This sounds like well, let's just say I can understand why this is such a contested, let's call it a tradition or maybe multiple traditions. I'm not exactly sure what to call it. It sounds so complicated that I'm happy that someone else is working on it. Where to start? First of all, maybe to clarify. So just so that I have it correctly. So your idea is that there was an early New Persian version of this text in Palestine, which was then translated into Georgian. So you don't, how should I put this? Can we, first of all, can we sort of confirm that the Georgian was translated from a Semitic text or from early New Persian on the basis of linguistic evidence? Is there any, because I remember you mentioned that one of the two Georgian versions also has archaisms. And I was also wondering what you mean by archaisms, as in Georgian archaisms, or is there some kind of indication that it was a translation from another language? Yeah, let's maybe start there, just to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. That's an important question. Well, there isn't very much clarity on how to get to know which was the original. Well, we have quite a number of translations from Arabic to Georgian, mainly hagiographical texts, and Tamara Kuperidze certainly knows that this better than me. And there are some clues that you can use to know whether this is a translation from Arabic or from Syriac or Greek. But the early translations from New Persian are quasi non-existent in the Georgian tradition. So we have a very rich tradition of later posterior translations from New Persian to Georgian and well, some reworking like Vepris Tausani, what's called in English, panther skin vested knight and other, but well, the early New Persian texts were full of Arabicisms, and they used Arabic constructions, they used Arabic words, and there is a very helpful article of Lezard about the formation of the early New Persian that you see that it was created in Khorasan within the context of coexistence of Arabic and the local patois, let's say Persian Iranian patois of the place. So we haven't got that much information how to get how to know whether it was Arabic or New Persian, but the archaisms were mostly the names which sounded differently in comparison with the longer version, which certainly was made from Arabic. Secondly, there were some constructions that Abuladze and other Georgian scholars, well, they signaled them as not very regular. That makes me think that given the lack of the clear clues to know whether it was Arabic or early New Persian, we can understand that it was either early New Persian or an Arabic version made directly from this early New Persian, which was always lost, which was also lost. So this is the basic idea. There are two possibilities: either the early New Persian, which was very Arabicized New Persian, or an early Arabic version which got lost. That is the idea.
Very good. Thank you very much. We have two questions lined up. First, Håkon, and then Tamara. Håkon?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Alexey, for a very interesting and clear lecture. And I come to this with a bit nervous, because I come from a very different field, and I'm not familiar with the arguments and the debates here precisely. But I wanted to ask you whether you have seen the recent publication of Coptic Manichaean material, which contained the name, where you find the name Eudastes, a wise man from the East, in Coptic Manichaean manuscripts from the early 5th century, but probably dating back to Syriac and traditions from the early 4th, late 3rd century CE. I don't know how this will place into the arguments, but I've been curious about how that is evaluated within the field.
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Now, I should say that I didn't come across this information, and I will be very grateful for any link to the article or published material. Well, actually, the Manichaean tradition was very widespread across different continents, and it was in Africa, it was in Central Asia, and certainly the Manichaean preachers could have translated some stories from it. But I would say that the 4th or the 5th century is too early for the story, just because it was only at that time that the Indian Jataka Buddhist story became propagated, became became popular within the Indian and Iranian milieux. So, well, one should probably consider a possibility of some Manichaeans taking it even before they became popular. But, well, that will presuppose a very complex story that I'm not very sure we can accept right now. Well, probably, certainly we should think about Manichaean tradition taking as well, because the Manichaeans were all the time in between the Buddhist, the Zoroastrian, and the Christian tradition, so they pick from everywhere. Well, I would say for me, the 4th or the 5th century sound too early for the spread of this stuff. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hakan also put in the chat if you need the reference.
I published, I put them in the chat,
yeah, thank you for that. Tamar, please.
Hi, Alexey. Thank you very much for this very, very interesting presentation. I enjoyed very much, and I am very much looking for this publication. I have just, I'm not very much familiar, to say true, with this particular topic, but I have a question. Maybe you can clarify this. As far as I know, in Georgian scholarship, and maybe also by other scholars, not only Georgians, they always assumed that this abbreviated version was an abbreviated version of the long version. And they never say that they come from different, they are properly the different translations of different originals, you know, or yes, models. So from this comes my question: when you compare those texts, when you gave us very broad contextual analysis of history around this text, you know, how it was circulating in the Middle East. But when you are based only on textual comparison between the long and brief versions, is there something textual elements that can support your hypothesis that something in the abbreviated version points out that it can't be the abbreviation of the long one and it comes from other model? You know, if I am clear in this question.
Thank you very much. You're perfectly clear. First of all, the publishers, the Aishvili and Abuladze, they were not very certain about the origin of the legend.
Yeah, that's I know.
And even Kekelidze was writing about Palauri Versia.
Yes, I know.
So there is a difference. There is a difference, especially in some constructions, which was to which Abuladze has pointed, but with no clear idea to what particular translating procedure it should be attributed. But anyway, the most significant point is the difference of the proper names. The proper names in the abridged version are much more archaic. For example, it is Habeneser, the name of the king, the father of Josaphat, let's say, or Bodhisattva, the prince, is Habeneser, while in the Avenes, in the long version, it is clear Habeneser is more clear to Junaisar and to the original Indian name than Abenes. That means that probably the abridgment, well, the abridgment was not, has not been done in the Georgian milieu, but already the early Georgian translators used another version, which was abbreviated version in Arabic or early New Persian. That's my idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
I believe Andy has another question. Kirill, did you raise? After Andy, Kirill has the next question. Thank you.
Maybe, well, two very different questions. One is just generally about popularity of this text, because I think, so there are only 3 Georgian manuscripts, if I get you correctly. How does it compare, for example, to the popularity? Because I don't know anything about this text. For example, the popularity once it gets translated into Greek. And from the Syriac side, for example, I was also wondering, so just to be clear, there are no Syriac versions transmitted, but so is there any indication that there was a Syriac interest in this text? Is there any references or anything like that at all?
Thank you. And then, as I've said, Van Landschot published 2 parables. There are 2 parts, well, 2 big parts: the story of Barlaam and Josaphat, the story of the prince and the ascetic, and the second part is the collection of different parables that are connected with the Panchatantra and all this Indian parable story, which later made their way to the Kalila Wadin collection. But some parables were translated into Syriac, from Arabic mostly, and they betray a connection with the Arabic versions of the 2nd generation. We don't see any, well, certainly later Barhebraios, as it used to be called, used this story that he has taken from some probably Arabic source. And well, apart from that, from 2 fragments in Landschot publication and Barhebraios, we don't have very much interest in for the story in the Syriac milieu. Probably there should be more to come with some hagiographical manuscripts. I'm pretty sure that we can wait for some surprises from new fragments or something that's probably Sebastian can say more about that. But for the time being, I see no big interest for the story in the Syriac-speaking, but it was quite popular in the Persian-speaking milieu, and that's why I think it's important. The Georgian version was certainly very popular because it became a part of this famous series of romances. Balavariani became quite a popular story in Georgian, and there are frescoes, there are retellings of the story in Georgian authors. Well, I would say that for the Georgian Christianity, it has become something quite important. Probably because it was a part of this big translation material made by the famous holy Mount dwellers like Eftim and Georgi Tatsmideli. But well, it was I would say it was much more popular than in Syria. Well, as far as we know.
Okay, thank you very much. We have now Kirill first, then Adrian, then Håkon again. Kirill?
Yes, thank you very much. Alexey, thank you again for a wonderful talk and for your interest. I'm very happy to see someone who actually takes the effort to unearth again the Syriac question, which is very intriguing because, yeah, to me also it's one of the biggest questions of the legend that we actually do not, until now, have not identified or found a full version in Syriac. A small comment just to complicate things further. The so-called Ismaili versions or the Muslim early Muslim translations, this Bombay edition based on the manuscript kept in the Ismaili collection now in London, and then also the Halle version. In their content, these texts have absolutely nothing Islamic, right? So that should be, I think, very clear, and absolutely nothing Ismaili as well. So they're very general. They talk about, Ahluddin. They talk about the true religion. They talk about this Nasik, but they do not specify any confessional or any doctrinal ideas, right? So they're very general, and this is somehow, I think, a feature which led them to assume that these are the earliest versions. But if you look at the manuscript evidence itself, actually, the Ismaili manuscript, it's called Ismaili because it is transmitted by the Ismaili collection and kept now in the Institute for Ismaili Studies in London. But it originates from Yemen. It's undated. And I've got actually a copy of this manuscript now, and studying these margins and sort of stamps, there is nothing which points earlier than 18th century. So it's probably a manuscript which was written in the 18th century. It's not that ancient, right? And the Halle manuscript is the end of the 17th century. So this is sort of just we have also problematic evidence to speak about, strictly speaking, historically, about these origins of the so-called early versions, right? The question which I would like to ask you, basically, relying on your intuition as an experienced scholar. So where do we have to look for, as an archaeologist, structural archaeologist, where do you have to look for Syriac, probably Syriac transmissions? And the other question, sort of looking at it more positively, if we can't find a Syriac version, isn't it an indication that by the time when the text actually gets Christianized, the Syriac is no longer the lingua franca, right? Even the Syriac Christians probably just read Arabic texts, so they do not need a Syriac version. Because if you compare it with other texts, we do have even Syriac Arabian Nights, and this is also where the Syriac parables are transmitted, like this parable of the man and the elephant, and so on. We do have the wisdom of Ahikar. So there are plenty of other texts which we do have in Syriac, but suddenly this massively popular text is non-existent in Syriac. But it becomes massively popular past 12th century, right?
Thank you very much. Yes, I am pretty sure that there are there is the notion of Ismaili is a symbolical one that I'm not insisting of its being used by particular Ismaili or Twelvers group, but well, it was called like that. So I make confidence to you and to other Arabic scholars who do very, very useful work to unearth this early Arabic translations. Well, where to look? I'm pretty sure that we should look more precisely into the hagiographic collection preserved in Sogdian and especially in well, if any, in early New Persian. There are like 4 or 3 new manuscripts preserved in New Persian in the Central Asia, which were published Max Müller and then Nicholas St. Williams, which certainly indicate quite a wide use of New Persian by the Syriac missionaries of the Church of the East in the Central Asia. So probably the lack of the Syriac version, the quasi-absence of the longer Syriac version. Well, we have the Syriac version, which was versions which were made from the Arabic in later times, but they are not the early ones. The absence of the longer Syriac version is something that probably corroborates the idea that the clue that the popularity time of this legend should be considered as a little bit later than the 5th or the 6th century, and later at the same time of when the Arabization of the Mesopotamia took place, and probably you're right. Thank you very much.
Adrian?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you very much. I just have a comment and a question. The comment is related to what Håkon said. I haven't read Badoon's discussion that he posted, but I think that has to be really looked at very carefully, because the evidence is quite early. I mean, the manuscript itself is 5th century, so that should be really taken into account, and maybe some things have to be reconsidered. But then the question that I had is also related to the Sogdian Manichaean material, because, and that's something that I didn't understand in your talk, so just a clarification question. When you spoke about this parable that Henning mentions, the prince and Chandata's son, do you consider that, because I don't think we have the text, we only have the title of this parable.
Yes.
Do you think that this may be a version of the Barlaam and Josaphat story, or is it just a parallel that you used to illustrate something else? So I didn't understand the place of that parable in your exposition.
Okay. Well, there are 3 elements in this centralization story. The first is the title we have discussed by Henning in the Sogdian Tales, and we have the title and a very vague indication that this legend was used in some ritual. Then we have quite a little bit wider part of the story published from the Koken Uyghur, which was probably made from Sogdian. And we have the mention by Rudaki, which is quite an early one. Well, within this triangle, you can postulate. Well, I would say very carefully postulate the existence of some Sogdian material, which is not, unfortunately, yet available for the scholars, for us, where this legend has to be situated initially. Well, that's all we know for the moment. But certainly we have no Sogdian, proper Sogdian text. I'm not telling that I have it.
Håkon, please.
Yes. I should probably have emphasized that I think the argument, at least in the last article that I put into the chat, it's not necessarily that the narrative itself is from the late 3rd or 4th century, but that you have we have fairly well attested now the Manichaean usage of some Yataka material, parables from the Panchatantra and other material that then in addition to maybe other material from the life of the Buddha that might have been used for the later construction of the narrative. Of course, this is hypothetical still. So, and as I said, I'm not familiar enough with the field to make that argument myself. But I suspect that that's maybe what, for instance, Badoon is might be arguing, if I understood it. So just to clarify that point.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that some stories about Buddha could have penetrated the Manichaean milieu even before the spread of the legend. But well, I will be very interested to look at the Coptic material. It has been some time since I did Coptic, and probably I will not remember very much of that, but I'm certainly would be very interested in reading that. Thank you very much for this indication.
Thank you very much. And we have probably the last question from Sebastian Brock. Sebastian, please.
Thank you so much, Alexey. That was most stimulating and exciting. My question is really for clarification. The element of Aristides that you get in the Greek, that's presumably inserted by Euthymius, or does it go back to the Georgian? Was it some Georgian scholar who thought of they'd go well together?
Thank you very much, Sebastian. I'm very flattered and delighted to see you between my listeners. Well, the Aristides, I think that the Apology of Aristides, which was written initially in Greek, has been preserved separately in the Syriac tradition and probably in some Greek tradition, because we don't see the Apology of Aristides in the Georgian version. It was included as a bulk into the Greek version. So well, my idea probably there is a Georgian colleague who did work in France. There was some kind of a colloquium on Aristides' apology, and the text was published. And she sent me the offering of her article, but she thinks that the two separate traditions, the Syriac translation and the Greek original coexisted at some point, but then the Greek manuscripts somehow were lost, and all we have as a separate Syriac text, and the version included by Euthymius into the Greek Barlaam and Josaphat. That's my impression from what I have read.
Thank you.
Adrian, thank you both. Adrian, would you put a big comment in the chat? Would you like to?
Yeah, it's just about the Coptic material. So regardless of how it relates to the story, I think the interesting thing is the name, the attestation of the name, because that would sort of invalidate the usual explanation you have that it's a misreading of the Arabic ba to ya, from Budasaf to Yudasaf. So if that's the name already attested in the 5th century, and if it's the same person, or if it inspired the name later, that would, lead to some reconsideration of the hypotheses, maybe. But I haven't read the article yet, so I can't say more.
Neither did I. So, well, the problem for me is that it is very clear that the Yodasaf comes from the Rasm way of writing Arabic, the early way of writing Arabic without dots, without Masora. So it's only in this early way of writing Arabic and early New Persian as well. We see it in the early New Persian inscriptions, for example. We can mix up two letters, but then Coptic texts should have been translated from some other. I would say probably one should postulate a Greek one, which was then translated into Coptic, but I can hardly imagine a Syriac text which had already made use of this ba-ya, because in Syriac, that it is fairly impossible to mix them up. That is our tools. So I'm sure we should learn more about the origin of the Coptic text and the context in which this Ioudasaphus was used. Well, I would like to look more precisely on paleography and codicology of this text.
Timothy, would you like to voice your observation, please?
Sure, I can do that. Thanks so much for the paper, and I apologize for having to come in late, but since we're both in Tübingen, maybe we could grab a coffee. No, I think you're absolutely right with the question about the insertion of the speech of Nahor into the Barlaam story. The Georgian, or at least this seems to be the consensus to me, that the Georgian is of course based on a Christianized Arabic form, but really only with the translation of the Georgian into Greek at the Eberhard monastery that you get the interpolation from Aristides. And I think that your observation too about that we have the Syriac tradition apart from the Greek is absolutely correct. I mean, the Greek, it was Armitage Robinson sitting in Vienna, reading through the Greek and realizing, wait a minute, I've seen this somewhere before. Oh yeah, this is the Syriac that Randall Harris just ran across. So no, I don't know of a better explanation than that. So I think that's right.
Thank you so much.
On this note, we would like to thank our speaker, Alexey, for a very interesting paper on the conversation, and to all our participants for joining in.
Thank you very much.
Very much looking forward to seeing you next time. Go ahead.
Thank you to everyone for participating and for listening. I'm very happy we managed to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.